Thinking about moving to Alberta? Don't. Not until you hear these 10 reasons why people may regret it. And number 1 is the one nobody's talking about. Number 10, big distances and car dependency. If you're used to that transit first, walkable lifestyle, Alberta, outside the big metro areas, can be far more spread out than you might imagine. You'll drive a lot more than you think. So if you're currently living in the metro area, particularly the downtown core or the inner city of one of Canada's large metro areas like Toronto, Vancouver, Ottawa, Montreal, and you're used to using transit, and you move here to Alberta, Calgary, Edmonton, or area, you could probably live a similar lifestyle here, but just warn you that Alberta is far more automotive centric than most areas in the country, and some 80% of even Calgary residents, for an example, would commute by automobile. Now, for example, in the Calgary area, which I'm near, if you're in a city like Okotoks or Airdrie, Strathmore, Cochrane, there are transit services, bus services that can get you into the city to commute. Particularly Airdrie has a good one, but the vast majority of people are still driving their car. So if you like to drive a car, then this is a good thing. Now, I know there is some talk of this, but we just don't have commuter rail service outside of the major metro areas connecting the cities together, like some parts of Quebec and Ontario do, and lots of the lower mainland and British Columbia do. Okay, number 9, politics and culture can be vastly different than where you might be coming from. Now, Alberta has a little bit of everyone, but the general default setting here is definitely more conservative, especially outside the big cities of Calgary or Edmonton. Now, if you're coming from Toronto or Vancouver, the vibe could definitely feel a little different. I think better, but it's different. Now, if you're strongly progressive and you're used to being in the majority, you might find you're the minority here, especially in the smaller centers. Now, it's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it's just something that not everyone expects. It's probably a good idea to hang around the communities you're considering for a few days before you make a moving decision. All right, number 8, winter. Now, every time I film one of these sections on the weather here, we're having middle of winter with above 0 temperatures like it is today. It's like 5 or 6 degrees out, and it's the first week in March. The winter here can be quite shocking, especially for people that are coming from some more moderately areas with like the coastal British Columbia or some of the sunny southern Ontario areas where they're just not used to getting some of the severe weather that we get. Some of these areas still get snow, but here in Alberta, it's not that we get a huge volume of snow, although we can. It's usually cold and wind. Now, you gotta be fair. So Alberta's a big place. So from the top of Alberta to the bottom of Alberta is about the same distance as the bottom of Alberta to Los Angeles. It's a big province. So this can really vary from further north, Fort McMurray, Grand Prairie area. If you get way down south, Tabor, I'm somewhere in the middle. And often we go down to Tabor where we have relatives, and it's quite often 10 degrees warmer there. So in short, if you want to live in a place where you don't need to carry a parka and some emergency clothing in your trunk in the wintertime, yeah, don't move to Alberta. All right, number 7, automotive insurance. Now, this varies a lot across Canada. Now, I did some research here, and it seems like Ontario drivers moving to Alberta are going to find they're saving money on their automotive insurance, but everybody else is going to find it's a bit of a boost when they come to Alberta. Now, BC, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan have a government insurance program. In Alberta, it's a private insurance, and so you can shop around for rates, and they can vary a lot depending on the insurance company and the broker that'll shop for the right rates for you. But in general, it's a little bit more expensive. I actually found that the rates reportedly in Quebec, Quebecers moving here will probably find their rates about double. All right, number 6, utilities cost. This one surprises a lot of people when they move to Alberta, especially the electricity bill. The electricity bill isn't just the electricity, but all the transmission costs that go along with it. Now, the electrical system here in Alberta has changed quite a bit, and there was a lot of enthusiasm to switch to a more green energy, and maybe a little bit quicker than the economics would have dictated. We had very cheap, very reliable coal-fired power plants here because we're not blessed with the ability to do hydroelectric power like many parts of Ontario and Quebec. And so we need to generate our power, and usually using coal or natural gas. So our previous government really quickly got rid of all the coal-fired plants that were very reliable and very cheap and had everything switched over to natural gas. Unfortunately, that is more expensive and it is less reliable. But the other thing that they did is put a big emphasis on wind and solar. There's huge solar farms have gone up, wind generators. The problem is that the sun is not always shining and the wind is not always blowing. And so we had to build lots of diesel backup generators for these for when they're not supplying power. And they're also far-flung all over the province. Remember, it's a big province. And so lots of transmission lines had to be built all over the place to connect all these together. It's a lot of expenses. Unfortunately, Alberta has the most expensive power in the country. We're working on it. The other part of utilities is most homes here are heated with natural gas. And that's actually relatively affordable here. Natural gas is quite a cheap source of heat. It does get cold. So in the summer months, there's going to be very, very little natural gas bill just to heat your water usually. And sometimes that's electric, but mostly natural gas. But during the winter months, you're going to burn some gas to keep your house warm. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Glenn Heslop, your local Harley riding realtor. I'm in the Calgary area and mainly a suburb just outside of Calgary called Airdrie, Calgary's best suburb. And I've been in this area like forever. And I grew up in the area and most of my life I've lived here. If you're considering a move here to Alberta, reach out. I'd be happy to go over with you the pros and cons and what it would look like for you to move here and answer all the questions that you might have and see if it's worth taking the next step. You can reach out. My contact information is down below. You can call me, email me, call, text, or I've got a calendar link down there as well so that you can just book an appointment in my calendar. Okay, the next 5. Now, number 5, housing isn't cheap anymore. Now, housing in Alberta is definitely way more affordable than the large metro areas of Ontario or British Columbia, but it's not 2015 anymore, and prices have gone up dramatically. So don't expect to be getting the mega cheap housing that we could buy back then. All that being said, you can buy a single-family detached home for apartment pricing from the GTA or Vancouver. Just a little bit of good news on this front is although over the last decade the price of housing in Alberta has risen dramatically, over the last year or so it's softened just a little bit, making it just a little bit more affordable and just a little easier for families to get into that perfect Alberta home. So, market's improving a little bit for you, but it's not back to 2015. All right, number 4 might be a surprise for you if you haven't visited Alberta in the summertime. And this is not every year, but wildfire season. The smoke can be dramatic. So when there are wildfires in the forest, we can get smoke from northern Alberta, but a lot of it comes from British Columbia. And there are some years it's quite traumatic. I remember going out to Banff, going camping with my family and a bunch of friends, and we were right next to Banff. And there was a family visiting from Europe. They'd saved up money to come to Canada, to come see Banff in the Rocky Mountains. And we're sitting there, and I'm like, I know that you could look up and see the mountains are right there, and you can't see any of them. I felt bad for these poor people, as they were here looking at just smoke. Hopefully they had a good time anyway. So this kind of matters for people with respiratory issues. There's a few weeks during the summer where it just gets smoky. And some years it's quite a high level, so it's just the visibility. And other years we actually get dustings of ash and stuff on your car. So it can be a bit of a deal for people with respiratory issues, and they end up spending more time indoors and just having a little bit more issues, but just forewarned. So basically, if you're coming from BC, sometimes your BC smoke gets here before you do. Okay, number 3 is healthcare anxiety. So this isn't just an Alberta thing, this is a Canadian thing. The healthcare system in Canada has been pretty overloaded lately. Alberta is about the middle of the pack as far as access to a referral to a specialist. But waits at emergency are going to be long, I think, no matter what province you're in. The bigger issue is getting a family doctor. And this has become an issue. So in the last 4 or 5 years, I think it was a 2024 study from the University of Calgary was showing that the number of family physicians that are accepting new patients has dropped dramatically. I know that the Alberta Health has been trying to recruit more doctors to come here to Alberta, some of them from other parts of Canada and some from foreign. And that seems to be working a little bit. And they do have a special website where you can go, if you're new here, to sign up and find a doctor that's within a reasonable drive of you that will take patients, that will take you as a patient. And you might be, say, in Airdrie and you have to drive 20 minutes to Didsbury or something like that. But usually you can find a doctor, but that's the big thing. And I would just plan ahead. Don't wait till you're here and then you're sick. So I would make that a priority as you're planning your move. Number two is the boom bust economy. Now, Alberta can be awesome when the economy is booming here. Now, the economy here is more and more diversified, but we're heavily dependent on resource, the oil business, oil and gas, and agriculture. So when the things are going well, there's lots of jobs, the money's flowing, and things are great, but there's downturns as well. Now, some of this is not really dependent on Alberta itself, as oil prices are set on the international market. And so if oil prices are down, things tend to go down a little bit more here. Now, some of the oil sands tend to be a little bit more even because these are long-term projects. They're like 50, 60, 70-year projects. And so they don't tend to be quite as cyclical. But it's just a fact of life here, the boom-bust economy. Now, I've been here almost my whole life, and I'm used to seeing, so you see these young guys that get a job in the oil field, and they're making huge money, and they buy a big house, and a big truck, and a big quad, and a big boat, and a big hot tub, all on payments, and they've got the world by the tail, and everything's awesome, and then a season comes through where there's layoffs, and they're freaking out. And I remember one of those seasons of talking to an old guy, working the same job, same industry, and he was just working on his hot rod because he's been around long enough to know that you make money when the times are good, and when there's a time when things are slower, you've saved cash and you just relax and enjoy life until it comes to another boom cycle. So you need to have more of a resilient financial plan here, knowing that we have a boom bust kind of economy. Now that may be different from for your line of work, but just so you know that the general economy is that way here. So just make sure you have a resilient plan if you're working in a cyclical industry. Now, the number one thing that's going to decide whether moving to Alberta is going to be great for you or it's going to be a nightmare is your job income plan. So Alberta is an amazing place to live, incredible, love it. It's the best place to live in Canada, but having cheaper housing and lower taxes and like a more conservative, freer society is fantastic, except if you don't have an income. So the number one deciding thing is, where are you going to work? Where's your income coming from when you move here to Alberta to enjoy this amazing place? So is your job transferable? Or do you have a job offer here in Alberta? And I really would be looking at very little else until I figured out exactly where am I going to be working, where's my income coming from. Yes, you want to investigate, is it a place I want to live, and what is the cost of housing and those things, but this is the first thing to put in place, because if you can't transfer your income here or get a job in Alberta that's going to pay you a decent income, then the rest of it's going to suck. Where's my work coming from? What's my backup plan? And is this income enough to support my monthly costs, mortgage, insurance, just my general cost of living here in Alberta? If you can't answer those three questions, then I'd pump the brakes for a bit. Now, and more, I'm seeing people that are able to transfer their jobs here or working remotely, where it's pretty easy for them to come. So they either transfer their job from an office in another part of Canada to the same company here, or they're working from home anyway, and it doesn't really matter. As long as they have internet, they can work from anywhere. So if you're ready to investigate upgrading your hometown to here in Alberta, I'm a local realtor here in the greater Calgary area. Reach out to me, be glad to have a conversation with you. There's no cost, no obligation. I'll try to answer all your questions and talk through what it would be like to move here to Alberta. I can show you some sample properties, talk about different areas that may or may not fit your family, what might be the best areas for you, talk about the commutes, proximity to the mountains, and all the things that you'll want to know about moving here to Alberta. You can reach out to me. My contact information is in the description below. You can call, text, email, and actually have a calendar link in there as well. So you can click the calendar link. Just make sure you pick a time that both you and your spouse are available so we don't have to reschedule the meeting. But if you're not convinced that Alberta is the best place for you to live, Alberta is your next best new hometown, then watch one of these videos. I'm sure one of those will convince you.